Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews, and welcome to the next month of review recall. This is covering a good handful of the albums that came out in March of this year. I didn't get to all of them. There were definitely a lot near the latter end of the year that I will eventually get to, but that will come in April. We are doing the ones in March, so let's just dive right in. Well, let me definitely say right now that this is a very unique record. While Clever may borrow heavily from his influences and peers like Post Malone and Juice WRLD, the melodies and beats transmutate this record into something never before heard. And I really enjoy what's going on here. A lot of tributes to Juice here as well, with some tracks even just being mostly silence. I think it does get off to a little bit of a rocky start on the earlier tracks, but once it hits tracks 5 and 6, it's just smooth sailing from there. I was very impressed with this album, and I think it's worth a listen. I'll be honest here, I enjoyed Last Year Was Complicated way more than anyone else should have, and I think Nick really outdid himself with this one. There's some great pop hits here, and I love the transitions scattered across this record. Everything feels so fluid and interconnected on a record that I wasn't expecting to be such. But it's certainly not a grand, revolutionary album that's going to redefine the pop genre at all, although it is probably Nick's best solo album to date in my opinion. Yikes. I expected to not like this going in. I'm typically not a huge fan of reggaeton at all, but this album surprised me with some really catchy bops and tasteful production. I do think it can get a bit boring and tedious at times, and that's mostly due to its crushing length, but there was some alright stuff in here. So this band had that big hit Geronimo in about 2015 and then pretty much subsequently vanished into obscurity. I saw zero push or promotion for this third record of theirs, but let me just say, I'm extremely impressed. Every track on here is memorable in some aspect, whether it's just a great vocal melody or performance, or even just a nice instrumental passage that was truly captivating. Let's bring these guys back into the mainstream. They're crushing it. They deserve it. This is a great album. Give it a listen. On first listen of this EP here, it was just so incredibly in one ear and out the other. So forgettable, and I was just ready to shelf this as just another teen star trying to go moody and just move on. But as I do, I gave it a couple more chances, and a lot of this really did stick with me. It still doesn't help her from sounding like a dollar store Billie Eilish, but I enjoyed more of this than I expected to. I've been a big fan of NF for a while now. The Search is one of my favorite albums of 2019, and I really love Perception and Therapy Session. So seeing this labeled as some kind of mixtape, I got a little bit skeptical that this was just going to be some kind of a filler, throwaway project. And my suspicions were mostly proven right here. The title track especially, it is just such a nothing song at its core. At least his earlier stuff had the vein to add a few more punchlines here and there, ones that made it a little bit interesting. Some of the tracks on here, though, are pretty good. I especially like Lost, Story, Paid My Dues, and I'm kind of a sucker for the immaculate flow work on Trust with Tech 9. But as a whole, this is probably one of the more mediocre projects NF has released to date. He did at least mention that this is going to be something to tide us over before another full album, so I'll be waiting for that, but I don't plan to return to this in full for quite a while. God, this is just such a difficult EP to hate in my eyes. I mean, the guy's just trying to help lift our spirits here. It's heartwarming, it's fun to sit through, brimming with positivity. That's all I could ask for coming from Ringo at this point. Holy, I was not expecting such good bops on this record. You know, FFF alone made this album worth keeping around. Everything else here is just an added bonus, and I will take all of it. Kings of Leon have always been that band for me that have always been pretty good, but they've never truly soared to great heights. Supposedly the band wants to see a revitalization of rock and have it jump back into the mainstream, and while I love that personally as well, this is the album you want to encourage that mentality with? Don't get me wrong, it's still a good release, but I personally just don't see this one having a long shelf life. You know, it's pretty good. There's not much else here I can really say. It'll certainly satisfy fans pretty well. The features here are mostly good, some are a bit more lackluster and mediocre than others, but those don't really detract all from the enjoyment here. Nice lyrical content too, feels very intimate and elaborate. It's well done. I enjoy it. You know, this album will really help you escape the bitterness and anger of the world, several tracks explicitly doing such in their lyrics. It's honestly one of the best projects Quinn's released to date. It's gonna be hard to top this, but I look forward to what he's gonna release next. Frankly, I mean, we could all use a change of scenery, and this album can provide that in audio form. Give this a listen. You won't regret it. You know, the only bitter truth I discovered about this album is that the production sounds like complete ass for the most part. Like, it shouldn't be difficult to hear Amy fucking Lee on a track, okay? But aside from that, the album's actually pretty alright. So this is a collective mixtape of sorts around YG's label 400 Records. And it's pretty good. I'm thankful this didn't seem to just be kind of a YG project with his label mates in the back, because he actually takes a back seat for a good majority of this record, letting the rest of the artists here shine on their own. And it's pretty solid as a result. And it is certainly better than most of the collective records I've heard in recent memory. I do enjoy the band pursuing down this microtonal direction here, and this definitely has much more character, flair, and punch than the 2020 Parallel record. But I mean, to be frank, I am still very new to the King Gizzard discography, and I really do think I need to dive into the plethora of records that the band has released, especially with most of them diving into different genres and stylings. But from mostly an outsider here looking in, I do think it's still a good record, certainly nothing revolutionary at all, but still a fun psych rock adventure that I think is worth taking. New one from the Paper Kites, American indie rock band, and this one sure hasn't changed too much with the formula at all, although I do really like that every track has a female guest vocalist, and a wide spectrum of collaborators too. That's probably the biggest driving force to keep this album engaging and interesting. It certainly does a good job, and I quite like the album. I think this album will really help to push 24kGoldn as a potential pop superstar in the making, putting his very unique and versatile tone in the spotlight with some catchy songs, and not to mention how well he can still hold his own with some of modern rap's heavyweights like DaBaby and Future on Highlight Coco. Not to mention Love or Lust, which is such a bop. This is a very impressive record from front to back, and it showcases his talents in ways that really shouldn't be ignored. Give it a listen, you won't regret it. Yeah, I think I might have to make a new rule to this series going forward. No gospel albums. I just don't have anything to say about them. I don't have any type of religious beliefs, so this type of music does absolutely nothing for me. If you enjoy it, please continue to enjoy it. I'm not trying to say this is bad at all, because it really isn't. But this is not music I'm interested in, or frankly music I just don't really care about. Sorry. For the most part, this album is pretty solid. Rod certainly does his thing on here, letting loose with some very passionate vocal performances, and his style I've always been a fan of. But 19 tracks of the same formula starts to run a little bit thin near the end, with little to no differentiation between each passing song. For the most part, again, it is good, but this is not an album to return to in full for a while. Man, what a victorious, self-congratulatory album, and very well deserved too, with this being Loretta's 50th album. And while her raspy timbre from back in the day may appear to have been filtered out, this album feels like a proud declaration of a long-standing legend, and it holds up. You know, this is a treat of a record. Okay, so Drake has been a very polarizing artist for me. I like some of his stuff, but most of it just doesn't seem to grab me that much. As I'm sure most of you saw by Dark Lane demo tapes taking a spot on my dishonorable mentions list last year. Regardless of that, I think this EP is fairly good. It only goes up for me with Lemon Pepper Freestyle being a great highlight in Drake's career in the past couple of years. And Lil Baby did not need to go that hard on Wants and Needs, but I'm thankful he did, as he easily stole the show. Overall, I think it is good, but I'm still really waiting for a full-length Drake project to grab me in the way Take Care still does. And I'm hoping Certified Lover Boy will be that. I'm happy Selena's harnessing and paying homage to her Hispanic heritage, and I think this does a good job here. It combines the fun, carefree, and at times sassy attitude of Rare, and throws several reggaeton beats over it, and it actually doesn't get as annoying or irritable as most reggaeton beats tend to be for me. I was pretty impressed. This is fun. You know, if I can at least say one thing positive about this new AJR album, is that it's probably the best overall album the group has put out to date, and it's reassuring to know the band has been slowly going up over the course of their career. That still doesn't mean I think it's very good. So I follow the XXL freshman class pretty faithfully, and I'm always interested to see the follow-up projects after an artist was featured. And this was CHIKA's, who I was really impressed with during the freestyle and the cypher, so naturally giving this a listen, this was really damn good. So much creativity, vulnerability, and confidence in this short collection of tracks. There is no reason to sleep on this. She is someone I'm going to be paying attention to going forward. What an EP. Didn't really find all that much to praise in this new Middle Kids album, but also didn't find anything that is downright bad. I guess you could say it's quite middle of the road. Aside from having one of the simultaneously coolest and funniest album names I've ever heard, this album's pretty alright. It wasn't stellar at all, but it sure was a trip with varying genre blending and instrumental passages. The tracks that hit, and they really hit. But the album did not need to be 17 tracks long. If it was cut properly, this could have been fantastic. But I still think this is an album worth experiencing. New Ariel Posen record, and it's another great record in his catalog, similar to his previous with some fusion of R&B, a little bit of country, kind of Beatles-era rock too, and that smorgasbord of genres is what really sells this record, as this overwhelming sadness and desperation in the lyrics can become a little bit repetitive. But regardless, it's wonderfully crafted and worth a listen. Jay really fits right in the middle of the YBN clique. He doesn't have the stupid, brainless appeal that Namir does, but he's also not the lyrical craftsmanship that Corday has. And as a result, he's kind of the one that everyone glosses over and forgets. This is his first solo project, very short, 8 tracks in 20 minutes. And it's not terrible. I like the diverse instrumentation here. There are a couple of witty lines scattered here, but as a whole, it's just a quick, decent album. It's nothing special, but if you like rap with the traditional money, drugs, gang association, and violence topics, you might want to give this a listen. There's really not too much I can say about this Bonnie Tyler record. It's got some lively, passionate energy like in her glory days, but with some updated production to the modern era. It's just a pretty solid record all around. Okay, so after some extensive listening, I have come up with a list of things that the new Midland album is. It's quaint, it is acceptable, it's satisfactory, it's not bad, it's good.
Well, that's nice, but is it a great album?
No. This is another collective record based around Lil Durk's group Only the Family, which outside of flagship member Lil Durk and the recently deceased King Von, may he rest in peace, no one else in this group has even come close to fame. This isn't a Dreamville situation at all. Most of the acts on this record, aside from Durk, Von, and the guest rappers, are just unknowns outside of the diehard fanbase. So this was Dirk really trying to tip the spotlight onto them to an extent, and with what we got here, I was pretty impressed. Definitely rooted in the Chicago drill scene, and it isn't like one member shines above all. It's pretty equally distributed, and I think that helps this record in the long run. It doesn't just feel like Lil Durk and the Protégés, it's a family affair, and I can greatly respect it for this. New one from Canadian singer Serena Ryder, and wow, talk about a sonic departure, and quite a lot more experimentation with genres. We get touches of soul, R&B, jazz, even adult contemporary, and most of it does work. Some of it feels a little bit vague and monotonous, especially during the beginning moments of the record, but it only gets better as it progresses. This is a pretty alright record, not too shabby. Well, this was certainly a surprise. Angstier, grittier, rougher than their previous release. And I know that's really coming off as a mixed blessing for the fan base, but I personally enjoyed it. While John may not be the best vocalist at all here, my god, I can just feel the spirit and the soul of music flourishing on this record. The rich musicianship, the versatility, the optimism. This album is just so melodious, beautifully crafted, and a celebration of experiences, upbringings, and culture. Such a gorgeous record. Don't sleep on this. Whew, alrighty, and that's it for Review Recall for March of 2021. Quite a bigger video this time. I definitely dove a little bit deeper this time around going into this. I wanted to try to fill it up. I'm not sure if I filled it up too much. This video is currently going on for quite a while as I'm looking at this right now. But maybe I might cut it back a little bit, but I don't know. I like doing longer videos like this, so let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.